How many Vault experiments from Fallout 4 do you actually remember? I realized that I never really read all the terminals in every Vault, so I missed many dark secrets about the experiments that happened there. Because of that, I decided to fix this, learn what happened in each Vault of the Commonwealth, and tell you about it. I will also place the Vaults in a tier list based on how scary their experiments were and how interesting their ideas were.
My vault had us conducting secret experiments on the residents. Perhaps the same is true for this one.
When you open the door to Vault 75, the first thing you notice is how different it is from a normal vault. It is built right under Malden Middle School, and this is not just a design choice. The vault was made only for children from 5 to 16 years old. Parents were given money and were told that in an emergency their kids would be safe here. That was the official story, but the real purpose was much darker. The terminals inside say clearly that Vault 75 was created for a long-term program to improve the human genome. In real life, this became a strict system where every action of a child was watched, rated, and controlled. The kids had constant physical, mental, and behavior training. They trained until they were exhausted, and all results were recorded. This was presented as preparing children for adult life. But the real goal was something else. Vault-Tec studied how to make a better human through heavy training, hormones, genetic changes, and very strict discipline. The most important part of the program was graduation day. Children were told that at age 18 they would finally leave the vault and start a new life. But in reality, this day decided their fate. If a teenager met all physical, mental, and genetic standards, they were killed. Their genetic material was taken and used for research to create better test subjects in the future. If a teenager was not strong, but very smart and obedient, they could become part of the Vault staff in secret. They were no longer test subjects and could enter closed areas. All other teens who did not fit any group were cremated. Only small parts of the story about the revolt inside the Vault survived. One observer wrote about a fire that destroyed decades of data, maybe on purpose. The notes also mentioned 2 staff members who planned a revolt even before they became observers. We do not know the full details, but it is clear that controlling this system was harder than creating it. By the time the sole survivor arrives in Fallout 4, the experiment is long finished and the vault is taken over by the gunners. The children's rooms, training halls, and labs are now just a base, but the old documents show how large and cruel the Vault-Tec experiment was and how well it was hidden from parents and children. Vault 75 is one of the darkest vaults in Fallout 4. Selective training of kids, a secret lab killing graduates, and total isolation. Vault-Tec went beyond their usual cruelty here because the victims were children. So I placed this vault in Category A.
Vault 81, have I got some questions for the folks down here?
When you first look at Vault 81, it is hard to believe it is even part of the Vault-Tec program. Compared to other vaults where people were broken, tested, or used as sacrifices, Vault 81 looks almost normal, but it became normal not because of the experiment, but because someone stopped it. The original plan split the vault into 2 parts, the normal living area for the residents and a hidden lab that no one should know about. Vault-Tec wanted to create a universal cure, a medicine for every possible illness. It sounds good, but the methods included testing on humans, and these humans were supposed to be the Vault residents. The first chosen overseer became sick before the Great War, so Vault-Tec had to pick another person very quickly. The new overseer had strong morals. When she learned the real purpose of the Vault, she sabotaged the experiment. She turned off the alert system during closure, so only 3 scientists ended up trapped inside the lab. Then, she broke the ventilation system that was supposed to send viruses into the living area. This protected the residents and cut the lab off forever. The scientists in the lab died over time and only Curie, a modified robot, remained. One scientist gave her the mission to finish the research. She did complete the cure, but she stayed alone in the silent lab for more than 200 years. Meanwhile, the people in the main area lived normal lives. They worked, raised children, and later contacted the outside world when their equipment started to break. For them, Vault 81 became a real home, not a prison. Only when the sole survivor arrives do they learn the truth hiding under their feet. When you look at the whole story, it is clear that by Vault-Tec standards, this is one of the softest vaults. The experiment failed, and the people actually got a normal life, something very rare. Even if the experiment had worked, it would still look simple compared to other horrible Vault-Tec ideas. But because the experiment collapsed, we got a very rare case, a vault that actually worked like a real nuclear shelter. It is also interesting to see normal daily life inside a functioning vault after the apocalypse. So I place this vault in Category B.
My name is Valerie Barstow, and I was to be the overseer of this vault.
Vault 88 was located under the Quincy Quarries, and at the moment of the Great War, it was almost unfinished. The bombs fell right in the middle of construction. This vault was supposed to run experiments that replaced actions the human body needs, but society sees as unproductive, with actions that were more useful. The idea for Vault 88 showed the classic Vault-Tec philosophy: turn normal human needs into something profitable and controlled. Here, they wanted to change how people rest, eat, play, and exercise by replacing these needs with machines that would both satisfy people and help the company. A bike that turned physical exercise into energy, a drink machine that could change the test subject's condition, an eye-testing device with hypnotic effects, and a slot machine that could reward or manipulate behavior. All of this was part of a bigger program. Remove unnecessary breaks like rest and relaxation and replace them with controlled processes. But the experiment never started. The urban sections stayed empty, parts of the vault were only carved caves, and the equipment was just early prototypes. The trapped staff received heavy radiation and slowly turned into ghouls. Only the Overseer kept her mind and became an intelligent ghoul who still lives inside the ruins of Vault 88. She is the one who offers the sole survivor a chance to start the Vault-Tec project again, finish the vault, bring settlers, and test the machines. Or stop the experiments completely and turn the vault into a normal settlement. Even though the developers let the player build Vault 88 however they want, the real Vault-Tec project never worked at all. Because of this, I place Vault 88 in Category C.
Looks like they had their support meetings in the Overseer's office. Sitting around and telling everyone else my problems isn't my idea of fun.
Vault 95 is one of the cruelest Vault-Tec experiments, and at the same time one of the simplest. Here, they didn't try to improve the human genome, change social roles, or build secret labs. The goal was much simpler and much darker. This vault was filled with people who had serious addictions, drug users, alcoholics, people trying to recover, and people who failed many times. They were promised a chance to start a new life underground, far away from temptation, but the real experiment was different. For the first 5 years, the residents were kept away from all harmful substances and forced to follow a strict rehabilitation program. The vault worked peacefully. People learned to live sober, held meetings, and even chose overseers. Many truly believed they had escaped their past. But Vault-Tec planned a final stage from the beginning. A secret company agent lived inside the vault. After exactly 5 years, he had to accidentally open a hidden room filled with every kind of drug and stimulant. This was not a test of willpower. It was a provocation created to see what would happen the moment people believed they were finally safe. The result was predictable. When the stash was found, some residents relapsed immediately. Others tried to resist, but tension turned into arguments, then into fights, and finally into gunfire. By the time the gunners arrived long after the war, only skeletons remained, lying beside scattered jet, psycho, and other drugs. Vault 95 died because Vault-Tec built addiction directly into the center of the experiment. This is one of the most tragic vaults, not because the experiment was complex, but because it was brutally simple and always doomed to fail. The people were never meant to be cured. They were used as tools so Vault-Tec could watch them fall again. Because of the cruelty and complete hopelessness of the experiment, I place Vault 95 in Category A.
Oh dear, is that... Mom? Sir, I'm so sorry.
To me, Vault 111 is one of the most horrifying experiments Vault-Tec ever created. Unlike other vaults that explored social behavior or pushed people to their limits, this experiment was completely scientific and absolutely inhuman. Study the long-term effects of cryogenic freezing on people who did not know they were test subjects. Residents were chosen in advance and registered as people suitable for long-term living, but in reality none of them were meant to live in the vault. They were meant to be frozen and observed, first by the staff, and later remotely. If the staff did not survive the nuclear war, the staff was considered expendable. The instructions said that breaking discipline or trying to leave the vault should be punished up to execution. They were even allowed to place the bodies of punished staff into free cryopods if it was convenient. The experiment was supposed to continue until Vault-Tec sent the open command. But that signal never came. Food supplies ran out, tension grew, and finally the staff tried to escape through the overseer's office. The signs inside show that everything ended in a firefight. None of the staff survived. By the time of the game's events, the only person who survived the cryo sleep is the main character. Because their pods stayed functional, all other residents died due to system failures or because of the Institute, which opened some pods early and only partially. Unlike many other vaults, Vault 111 has no social experiment and no attempt to build a new society. It is a simple, cold scientific test, fully based on the idea that the participants will never give consent and will never know they are being used. Because of this, Vault 111 is one of the most brutal Vault-Tec projects, not because of violence inside, but because of the complete indifference to human life. None of the residents had a chance or a choice. That is why I place Vault 111 in the highest category as one of the most inhuman vaults.
So I got a question. Why the hell would anyone build a vault out of a subway station? This place is like the opposite of airtight.
Because they weren't planning to use it, you moron.
Vault 114 is one of the most absurd but also one of the most revealing Vault-Tec projects. Even its location shows that the company never planned to use this vault properly. The entrance is built directly inside the unfinished Park Street subway station, the door is not airtight, and from some parts of the station you can even see sections of the vault. But the experiment itself had a clear idea. Vault 114 was supposed to house members of the upper class, government officials, wealthy businessmen, and people with high status and big ambitions. All of them were promised a luxury vault with comfort and a high standard of living. But in reality, the project was funded with a reduced budget and the construction was given to outside contractors, something that already broke the secrecy of the Vault program. The main idea of the experiment was both the unusual living conditions for upper-class residents and the type of leadership they would receive. The terminals say that the overseer had to be someone with very little education, no leadership skills, and preferably someone who disliked authority and rich people. Vault-Tec wanted to observe how people used to power would behave when they lived under someone who despised them from the start, in a place with limited resources and none of their usual luxury. But the experiment never began. By the time the bombs fell, the vault was still unfinished. Materials and equipment were lying in the hallways, the living sections were not ready, and the list of residents was still being formed. The people for whom this experiment was created never entered the vault. After the war, the vault was taken over by gang members, and it became nothing more than a convenient underground base. All that remains from the original idea are the documents in the terminals and several unfinished areas scattered around the station. If we look at Vault 114 not as a game location but as a Vault-Tec project, it becomes clear this is one of the most poorly executed experiments. The idea existed, but there were no conditions, no residents, and no experiment at all. And since the developers often add vaults that never truly started working, I place Vault 114 in category C.
How'd anyone stay sane living in a place like this?
Vault 118 is one of the strangest and most contradictory Vault-Tec projects. This happened not because of good planning, but mostly because the funding was suddenly cut. At first, the plan was ambitious: build an elite vault hidden inside a luxury hotel, attract rich residents, and then place them next to another group of people living in much worse conditions. According to the idea, the vault should have had two groups: very rich residents, served by robots and free from all rules, and up to 300 ordinary people who would live in a small and crowded section of the vault. They were supposed to be shown the beautiful advertising area to create the illusion of luxury and then be locked in the tiny wing. The key idea of the experiment was that the rich residents would decide the fate of the second group. Any conflict, rule violation, request, or complaint from the workers would be judged by the privileged residents. The punishments would then be carried out by the robots, but the experiment never started. As soon as the luxury part of the vault was finished, the funding was suddenly stopped. The main investor claimed he had difficulties collecting money from future residents, but in reality he simply ended the project. The second section stayed unfinished, and the workers who were meant to live there were never moved inside. In the end, only the elite group entered the vault, along with one overseer, who became the only living human inside Vault 118. The rest of the space was filled with robo-brains. The rich residents decided to survive the war not in their human bodies, but in robotic ones. One of them, a general atomics scientist, convinced the others that transferring their minds into robo-brains was the best way to achieve immortality. When the Great War began, the vault sealed shut, and no one else was allowed inside. The overseer stayed the only human, while the rich group became a closed robo-brain society, living with their old habits but in total isolation. The Vault-Tec experiment never happened, but life inside continued anyway, until 200 years later, when a murder occurred. This event forced the RoboBrains to ask for help from a detective from the surface for the first time in 2 centuries. In a strange way, the Vault became successful, not as a Vault-Tec experiment, but as a pre-war micro-society that managed to survive for centuries, even after losing its human bodies. And because of that, even though the developers once again made an unfinished Vault, I still place Vault 118 in Category B.